Sacramento is the capital of the American state of California. In 1991, it was a dangerous place where hundreds of murders were reported each year. Investigating them was more challenging than today, but it was this difficult task that Detective John Cabrera dedicated his life to. He didn't yet know that he would soon face an investigation that would be followed with unprecedented interest across the country. Before starting, do subscribe to our channel and make sure you like the video. It helps me get more views. On March 7th, he was called to a very quiet neighborhood, mainly inhabited by retirees. The victim was 58-year-old Philip Inhofer. Philip was a former military man who had been working at the Melen Air Force Base as a civilian. His son Henry Inhofer called the police. Henry was called by his father's boss, informing him that his father hadn't shown up for work as a former military man. Philip rarely ever showed up late, let alone failed to show up at all. Hence, Henry immediately went to find out what had happened. He discovered the body in a small storage room. It was a horrifying sight. Philip was naked and lying face down, covered in blood. His head was tightly wrapped in a white plastic bag. John and his team didn't need much time to understand that Philip wasn't killed in the storage room where his son found him. The shredded shower curtain and blood on the bathroom walls indicated that the attack began there. Philip was taking a shower when the attacker lunged at him with a knife. His glasses were lying on the sink, meaning he didn't even have time to put them on. The initial knife strikes didn't kill Philip, and numerous defensive wounds on his arms indicated that he fought for his life. He even managed to exit the bathroom and push the attacker into another room, but was eventually overpowered. The assailant inflicted 32 strikes on Philip with 2 knives, one of which broke and got lodged in the victim's chest. After that, the assailant grabbed something heavy and struck the man's head so hard that blood splattered onto the ceiling. Then he placed a bag over the victim's head, tied it, and moved Philly into the storage room. Whoever did this had to possess exceptional strength to overpower a sturdy man, a former military man, at that, and then move his body. The murder occurred in a very quiet neighborhood, and John Cabrera was not mistaken in assuming that someone should have heard something. A neighbor living across the street from Philip recounted that on the 5th, he and his wife were at home. Suddenly, the usual quiet of the night was disturbed by loud rhythmic thuds. He decided to investigate the source of the noise. The man stepped out of his house and headed toward the sound. The thuds were coming from Philip's house, but they quickly ceased, and the lights went out. The neighbor thought that Philip might have been exercising and the sound could have been weights being dropped on the floor, but the detective realized the neighbor heard Philip's murder when the assailant was striking him on the head. Therefore, the crime took place late at night on the 5th around midnight. However, the motive for the crime remained unclear. It was unlikely to be a robbery, since none of the drawers in the house were pulled out, and all the valuable items were left untouched. A possible clue was provided by Henry. He noticed that his father's car was missing. It was a Mercedes, always parked under the carport at home, with an original license plate, with the numbers 36. Could the car have been the motive for the crime? Another thing in the victim's house drew attention. There was a note on the bedside table in the bedroom with a phone number and the name Jade Kabading. Obviously, Jade played some role in the victim's life. If Philip carefully kept her number, however, none of the man's relatives and friends had ever heard of her. Who could this mysterious woman be, whom he kept hidden from everyone in this matter? There were far more questions than answers. Any investigator knows that how a person lived often gives a clue as to how they died. That's why John began to study the victim's personal life. There were no reasons to suspect the man's family. Henry didn't often see his father while growing up because he was a military man stationed in Korea, then Vietnam, then Thailand. But when Philip retired and moved to Sacramento, it allowed the men to develop their relationship. Philip lovingly cared for his son and granddaughter. Spending a lot of time with them, he was a very gentle, kind, generous man, always ready to help. However, even though he led a quiet life, Philip Inhofer wasn't a recluse and enjoyed spending time with colleagues attending square dancing. Then it wasn't enough for him, and he decided to add some vibrant colors to his life. He bought a red Mercedes, but he didn't stop there. For some reason, he was attracted to girls who worked in the escort industry. Henry learned about this when he found the corresponding brochure in his father's house. The police began to understand that the name on the bedside table might be related precisely to this aspect of the victim's life. JN asked around the streets of the city, but no one knew anything about Jade Kabading while studying Philip's phone calls. John Cabrera noticed that one number had no relation to the victim. so he simply dialed that number and directly asked the man who answered what his phone was doing on the call list of the deceased person. Additionally, he inquired if the man knew Jade Cabading. The man indeed recalled a girl named Jade. He had given her a ride when her car got stuck during a storm. She used his phone to call someone in Sacramento to pick her up and retrieve her Mercedes. Jade also mentioned to him that she worked at Mustang Ranch. John realized that he had finally stumbled upon a trail of the mysterious stranger. The witness not only linked Jade to the missing Mercedes, but also provided John with a clue to where she worked. Mustang Ranch was a legal brothel in the USA. It was located in Nevada and was considered a highly popular yet controversial place. With a copy of the girl's driver's license and her photo, John was able to identify her real name. The acquaintance of Philip and Hofer turned out to be a 19-year-old, Michelle Cummisky. Among thieves, there is no honor. The same can be said for the girls in the brothel. They were willing to tell the police everything they knew about Michelle and recalled all the rumors that surrounded her. John had doubts about how much he could trust them. Being the most popular girl at Mustang Ranch, Michelle or Jade earned more than anyone else, which could not help but stir envy. Nevertheless, he learned a lot of new information about Michelle. She grew up in Iowa after her parents' divorce. The girl lived with her father and brother but couldn't get along with them, so she moved to her mother. However, she couldn't fit in with her stepfather there either. So at the age of 14, she ran away from home and headed to Florida, while other girls her age were studying in school and living under the loving care of their parents. Michelle had to survive on the streets, but strangely, she quickly felt at home there by the time she became almost an adult. Her sexual allure and ability to use that power were phenomenal. She was a tall, athletic girl who was not only beautiful, but also friendly, intelligent, adaptable to any situation. She did not conform to the stereotype of night butterflies. Her excellent manners and tasteful dressing set her apart from her peers. Even other girls couldn't resist her charm, let alone men. Since then, sex and violence followed her at 19. She managed to marry twice. Rumors among the girls at the Mustang Ranch were that she threw a radio into her first husband's bath to electrocute him. Although the police found no evidence of this, her second marriage was even more interesting. But shorter, she married a young soldier in Hawaii out of the blue. The young man fell ill, severely catching the attention of his commander, who demanded an investigation into the strange illness. Army investigators found a witness who saw Michelle adding rat poison to the food she prepared for her husband, but they couldn't interrogate the likely Black Widow. Michelle fled the Army, concluded that the young wife seeking her husband's insurance payout wanted to receive $30,000 from her husband's insurance. What's most surprising is that despite all that happened, her husband continued to claim that Michelle loved him and would never do such a thing to him anyway. It was precisely because of her work at the Mustang Ranch that Michelle met Philip in H. She confessed to her friends that she liked Philip and that he could be her ticket to a normal life. She spent all her free time with him. They saw each other for about 4 months, and in turn the man increasingly fell under Michelle's charm. He bought her jewelry, clothes, and showered her with attention. For Michelle's sake, he even got rid of his beloved dog. At some point, he asked his son how much his Mercedes-Benz was worth. Henry didn't understand why his father decided to buy another car simply because Michelle liked the Mercedes. He wanted to know how valuable the car was that she was so fixated on. So Michelle's past hinted at no prior crimes, but her former roommate became the key to the investigation. She revealed that on March 5th, the day of Philip's murder, she dropped Michelle off at the man's house in Sacramento. Additionally, the girl recalled how Michelle asked her to stop at a store where she inquired with the clerk about the effects of rat poison on a person, as a result establishing that Michelle was the last person to see Philip alive. John obtained a warrant for her arrest on March 25th. She lived 15 mi away from Sacramento, but when the police arrived, it turned out she had fled long ago. They and her friend vanished in the middle of the night, not even paying rent. John Cabrera knew that finding Michelle would not be easy, especially since she had a head start of a whole month. The detective contacted the FBI to put her on the national wanted list. At the same time he obtained the address of the warehouse rented by Michelle. The detective hoped to find crucial evidence there, maybe even the murder weapon. Unfortunately, nothing significant was found. Only numerous boxes that allowed the police to learn more about the fugitive's hobbies. She created amazing things from stained glass and was a fan of Batman comic books. The girl had amassed a whole collection of photos and posters about bats in general, and Batman in particular. Meanwhile, news of the 19-year-old beauty wanted in connection with such a brutal murder naturally caught the public's attention, but John understood that if he didn't come up with something, interest in her would soon fade. Years of work had taught the detective to interact effectively with the media during an interview with a journalist. He realized how to keep the story afloat. She asked him to tell her about the suspect, and he confessed that he called her Batgirl. The journalist's eyes lit up. John realized that this was exactly what he needed. He explained to her that Michelle was a Batman enthusiast, so much so that she had tattoos of bats encircling her left arm and tattoos of bleeding bite marks on her neck. The journalist published an article about the fugitive known as Batgirl, and it spread like wildfire. Despite this catching, Michelle was not easy, aware that the police were searching for a beautiful young woman. She always tried to stay in the company of others. At one point, she went to Los Angeles, where she was fortunate to join the team of a very famous boxer in Vegas. There was a fight between Tyson and Ruck, and being resourceful and sociable, Michelle easily mingled with the boxer staff and even attended a party with them in Nevada. Then she headed to Phoenix, Arizona, where she danced in a strip club in Phoenix. Knowing that people were aware of the tattoo on her arm, she concealed it under another tattoo. She left the one on her neck because it was hidden under her hair, but every time another story about her appeared in the newspapers or on TV, she moved on, realizing she needed to keep moving. John's instincts hinted to him that she was heading to Florida, which he informed his colleagues about. She had always told her friends at Mustang Ranch that someday she would go to Miami. Apparently, she planned to reach Miami and then travel to some country in the Caribbean. Perhaps the Ba convinced she would never be found there. She was probably right, so finding her should be a top priority. More than a month passed. And despite the unwavering interest from the media and the public, John and his team were one step behind Batgirl until luck finally favored the police on May 7th. Michelle and her friend, whom she met in Phoenix, pulled over in a rented van at a parking lot in Mississippi to have a snack, unaware that the van's door was slightly ajar, revealing the Mercedes parked inside that gleamed in the light. However, a police officer sitting across the road noticed it. He approached, intending to warn the driver, but was drawn to the silver-colored Mercedes-Benz parked inside the van without license plates. Michelle explained she was just transporting the car. She probably didn't know that every car has a VIN number. The officer checked the car's VIN number, and of course discovered it was the vehicle involved in the brutal murder in Sacramento, and was being sought. Both women were arrested. Michelle's new friend didn't even know her as Michelle M. She knew her as Julie Nelson. She was quickly released. As for Michelle, John Cabrera had found the suspect and the car, directly linking her to the death of Philip Hoffer. But without the murder weapon and forensic evidence proving her involvement in the murder in court would be difficult. What was needed was a confession. Therefore, he flew to Mississippi as quickly as possible. He introduced himself to the girl, read her rights, and provided her with the opportunity to demand a lawyer. But she decided to answer his questions. Michelle said, "I caused pain to the man I loved," and then began her story. On that day, March 5th, her friend dropped her off at Philip's place. She arrived with her things because she had decided to quit her job at the Mustang Ranch and move in with him. After a day of shopping, they came home and had a wonderful evening. Later, when Philip went to take a shower, she slipped into the bedroom to take banned substances. She had been addicted to them for a while, but this time they unexpectedly affected her. She returned to the bathroom, but instead of Philly, there was a monster. A terrifying monster with snakes coming out of its neck. Suddenly, she heard a voice. Evil forces urged her to deal with the monster, listening to the command. Michelle started attacking it with a knife. After breaking one knife, she took another and continued. Then she beat it with a baseball bat, but that didn't seem enough, so she tied a bag over its head to make sure it couldn't breathe. Then she moved Philip to the storeroom, tidied up, had dinner, loaded her things into the car, and left. She claimed that she was also compelled to take Philip's car by evil forces because of its distinctive license plate. So as a defensive tactic, Michelle opted for temporary insanity. However, several aspects did not fit into this picture. Firstly, she didn't just flee from Philip's house and hide in his car. She had the presence of mind to clean up the crime scene and take away all the dirty towels, one of the knives, and the bat. Secondly, on her way to Philip's place, she inquired about the effects of rat poison. This means that she contemplated the crime for some time, and the attack wasn't spontaneous. Thirdly, she openly told everyone that she would take her Mercedes. It was precisely the Mercedes that led to Philip's demise when he refused to gift her the car. She simply killed the man because she desired the vehicle so much. Michelle Cummiskey was charged with first-degree murder, but John's work was not yet finished. He had to gather as much evidence as possible for the trial. Upon inspecting Philip's found Mercedes, he discovered bloodstains inside and an aluminum bat. The stains were from the towels that the girl had disposed of while she decided to leave the bat. He also found something like a ledger containing data on hundreds of the girl's clients, including Philip's name. The evidence was piling up like a snowball, and it seemed that Batgirl's days were numbered. She faced the highest penalty. The judge reviewed all the evidence collected by John and his team and ruled that it was more than sufficient for a jury trial. Apparently, Michelle arrived at the same conclusion, realizing that incontrovertible evidence had been gathered against her. She struck a deal. She received a sentence ranging from 26 years to life imprisonment and never appeared before. A jury journalist repeatedly asked her for an interview, and she declined each time. However, on the third occasion, she responded in writing, admitting that she lives every day with the murder of Mr. Inhofer. Days pass, and she feels an increasing understanding and respect for his life, making her sorrow deepen. I took this man away from his family, friends, and everyday life he deserved to live every time the Parole Commission's review date approaches. I bring pain again and again, making them relive this horror. I am no longer the young girl I used to be today. Michelle Cummisky emerged as a relatively young woman. She had just turned 50 and could enjoy the remaining years of her life. What she's doing now, and whether she can adapt to life at 50, remains unknown. Since youth, she was accustomed to using her beauty, attracting men like a magnet. But at 20, finding herself, making her sorrow deepen.